So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being broadcast only on the internet and coming from London in the UK. This is 15:55 hours GMT, that is 16:55 hours UK local time on Friday the 30th of July 2021. Now there is a number of stupid, cruel, ignorant pieces against animals on the Times. And it is unbelievable. Unbelievable, literally stupid. They are still debating the animals feel pain. We shall have to talk about this issue extensively, not just in this edition, but in later editions as well. So we shall focus on the idiocy of the UK Parliament debating whether animals have feel pain or not. And that is not recognized. The issue of the animals' welfare or issue of animal welfare is not recognized in the stupid Dirty Digger Murdoch's pornographic business based on Katie Price. I mean, she has absolutely not shown, Katie Price has not shown any basis for being given the platforms except her serial fakery about her body. I mean, this is supposed to be the civilized country. I mean, this is civilization, is it? Trading on Katie Price and her assets. And I got a stupid piece called Al Qaeda terrorist got job as Sarko refuse collector. Osama bin Man. I mean, this is stupidity. All the wrong things are given. All the wrong things are given the right. All the wrong things are given the right kind of weightage. And if the parrot can learn how to swear by listening to television, what does it prove? It proves that animals, only difference fear, but animals are thinkers and able to learn things. Now here is a foul-mouthed parrot constantly tells his owner. Now that is a very good target to F off. After learning how to swear from watching television, African grey Page, his name is Page, picked up his bad habits from popular series including crime drama Broadwalk Empire. He now gets moved to the dining room after the 9 p.m. watershed, so the television swearing doesn't set him off. Owner Adam Paget, 52, even has to watch his own language when his pet is in earshot, as Page will pick up on anything rude. Adam said he will say F off for F's sake, F that, and all that sort of stuff. I think he learned it off television and us. I'm a bit of a swearer. He said his grandkids tell on the parrot's profanities when they come round and say he has been using naughty words. Adam bought the bird for £650 as a 3-month-old chick 10 years ago. Adam explained he picks up on it and just says it. He's been doing it since about a year old. When he first started, we kept saying, is he swearing? Page also says, go away now. I'm not in the mood. Shut up. Right. I'm off. And I'm a sexy boy. Adam of Wakefield, West Yorkshire, added, he was always telling the dog to go outside. He did as he was told, but was so confused. So this is a lot of words that the bird is using. Words that are absolutely accurate. And if the bird could actually communicate in his own language, he could explain a lot more. So what are the British members of Parliament in the House of Peers, that is the upper house so-called? What do they need? I mean, do they need punishment, physical punishment and the cruelty that is done to animals, to be able to relate to that? I mean, we shall come to that in serial illustrations of the various acts that animals are subjected to. So there is a piece, all these Fleet Street papers, as we say, we diagnose, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. And these are absolutely based on lies, denials, and stupidities. And here is the piece that is based on a report by the Home Affairs Select Committee in the House of Commons. And this one is on page 4 of the I newspaper. Policing still marred by racial disparities. Again, it is based on denials. At every stage, it is denial of the truth, and it is stupidity and ignorance. And it is stupidity after stupidity. This thing about pinging, record 700,000 people pinged by NHS app in the week. And it's absolutely dozens and dozens of pieces about COVID-19 and vaccination. There is a piece about the rapper, the black rapper side, who is funding another 30 black students. A further 30 black students are to receive scholarships worth £20,000 a year to study at the University of Cambridge, courtesy of the British rapper Stormzy. Now, we shall not go into the ridiculousness of the hype about Cambridge and Oxford. Just note that for the time being. Obviously, this is based on the myth that Oxbridge somehow are unique. It doesn't actually look at the evidence of the crime committed by Oxbridge listed graduates and enrollees, and the role played by those their predecessors over hundreds of years in criminality and racism, injustice, and so on. And Kathy Newman, who is a Channel 4 News presenter, has got a column on this I newspaper. And this one is about Johnson's plot about fighting crime. And the accompanying picture shows a very satisfied looking Priti Patel. She would never look that satisfied standing near what she would call a migrant. Migrants, she obviously treats as even worse than the attitude of the stupid parliamentarians, worse than animals, incapable of feeling pain. So here is a piece about a kitten And the caption is, do you need to be an expert in veterinary science to understand cats? One eye reader thinks not. And it says, the eye reader is named Deborah Cox in Sheffield. I'm a pet owner. I do not proclaim to be an expert in feline behavior and welfare, as researchers cited in your article are described. The research summary published in Frontiers in Veterinary Science regarding how we should interact with our cats is not news to me. I have long understood how to interact with these wonderful animals, as have thousands of other pet owners over hundreds of years. Credit where it is due. Please, rather than patronizing advice disguised as research. Absolutely true. And this is only a tip of the iceberg, that letter. But it actually sums up the real problem in this. How could these stupid people dominate the world? Go to Africa and Asia and take over countries. How could they do that? And there is this incredible headline. Well, there are two headlines on the front page of the Financial Times of today, Friday, the 30th of July 2021. The lower one first. Consumer spending boom powers bumper earnings and lifts United States growth. Now, this is in darkness. The financial crimes is in denial. How many millions of people in the USA are in hunger and starvation? That should be the headline. Consumer spending should be qualified. That is to say, it should be contexted in the reality of lives of the millions of people in America who cannot spend anything, who don't have anything to spend. How does that go on? And how can that be called sick-makingly, brazenly, boastfully, spending, boom, power, bumper, earning, lift, growth? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 words. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 words out of 10 are positive, boastful. Consumer, by definition, means consumption. Spending, again, positive. Boom, positive. Power, positive. Bumper, positive. Earnings, positive. Lift and growth. That's absolutely criminally irresponsible, untruthful, and corrupt. That is financial crimes. Then there is a piece on the first one on top of the page. Page 1 is about the Conservatives in the UK getting funding. And this is sick-makingly criminally negligent of the financial crimes. Because the first heading, property sector donations rise to quarter of all funds gifted to Tories. Now, why should there be so much extra financial capacity on the property sector donors? What is going on in the property sector? What are they doing with the property sector? Because that is making property less available for social use by the millions, by the many who are in need of housing but are robbed of the available housing stock. And there is another piece about the boom in finance. Now, the Lloyd's Bank profit soared to 2 billion. What is going on? And as I said, every single item about COVID-19 is full of contradictory content, like this one. Key worker test centers unopened. Just 13% of the 2,000 testing sites for key workers excluded from self-isolation rules are in operation so far, despite the number of people pinged by the NHS COVID-19 app hitting a record. Now, isn't it absolutely brazenly contradictory? What is going on there? And all the items in the Financial Times about the state of the economies are upbeat. and the Financial Crimes, edited by this Lebanese-born woman of Muslim origin, is a complete mental slave. Complete mental slave crook. Because she is not following the evidence. And there is a reluctant piece about one of the criminal outfits, also known as the firm of solicitors called Mishkan Ria, having been found guilty of stealing clients' money. Surprise, surprise. These soul cheaters, either trading as soul cheaters or as collections like Mishkan Deria or Diria, are all thieves stealing money under various disguises. Here is this piece about, and it's printed under support services. What a stupid heading. And it's byline to somebody called Kate Baoli. Mishkan Deria and its former head of sport are being prosecuted by the legal regulator for England and Wales over the way the city law firm handled money for some of its sports clients. The Solicitors Regulatory Service or regulatory authority, SRA, said yesterday that Elizabeth Allen, who stepped down as a partner at the firm to set up a sports consultancy last year, and Mishkan would both face a lawyer's disciplinary tribunal hearing. In due course, two former Mishkan lawyers said the case against the firm concerns the treatment of some of its sports agent clients who are permitted to route commissions paid to them through Mishkan. Rules dictate that all money passing through law firm client accounts must relate to an underlying legal service. Mishkan is being prosecuted for alleged failure to take any or adequate steps to prevent payments to be made into and from the firm's client account in circumstances amounting to the provision of a banking facility, said the SRA. SRA said Allen had a case to answer relating to claims that payments were made to and from the firm's client account in circumstances amounting to the provision of a banking facility. Mishcon said the claim against Allen relates to technical breaches in 2011. Now, stop there again. It's 10 years. 10 years ago it took place. And the SRA has just about managed to come down 10 years later to stage a claim that it is doing something absolute criminally false. And the whole kind of statement issued by Mishcon is typically corrupt and dishonest. And there is again a contradictory piece in the Financial Crimes about the Eurozone. FTB Greed on page 21. The heading is COVID Realities, Temper Recovery Hopes. And the detail summarized subheading, growth in the bloc's output is expected to increase at its fastest rate in 2 decades. But the need to manage the pandemic's rising caseload and change to its fiscal policy could hit that rosy outlook. Again, it's a secretive thing. Why do they put that positive headline and then contradict it? We shall go more into Mishcon and the lies and the theft of the money, client account money. Well, there is a continuation of the attacks on Harry and Meghan. Both their eyes are hidden under black lines, and they're mocked as being shy bloke and his wife. How criminals and murderers get away for decades is exposed in the so-called Suffolk Strangler being arrested for new murder. And Fleet Street and the local papers just let the murderers get away until accidentally caught again, if ever. As has happened with this one, the murderer called Steve Wright. The Suffolk Strangler is being questioned over the death of a teenager nearly 22 years ago, it is claimed. Evil predator Steve Wright, who was locked up for life after killing 5 women in Ipswich, has been arrested over the disappearance of student Vicky Hall. Vicky was last seen alive as she walked home from a nightclub in the early hours of September 19th, 1999, in Felixstowe, Suffolk. Her naked body was found 5 days later by a dog walker dumped in a ditch around 25 miles away in Creting, St. Peter. A postmortem revealed that she had been strangled but not sexually assaulted. The murder inquiry was reopened by cold case detective on the 20th anniversary of Miss Hall's death. I mean, it beggars belief. The so-called investigative journalists go into voluntary, self-induced slumber. Now here is a piece taking us all in this particular item to 1971 and John Stonehouse. And they've got a piece, well, they've got the grave pretenders, infamous man who faked their own deaths. And they've got Stonehouse, and who else have they got? US author Ken Kesey achieved fame with his 1960 book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was later made into a hit film with Jack Nicholson. I will come to the Cuckoo's Nest again in a minute. But in 1965, he was arrested for the possession of marijuana. Fearing a prison sentence, he faked his death by leaving a truck on the edge of a cliff near Eureka, California, with a suicide note. He then fled to Mexico in the boot of a friend's car. But the authorities weren't convinced, and Kesey eventually, tired of life on the run, returning to the US 8 months later. He was sentenced. How long was he sentenced for? 6 months. He was sentenced for 6 months behind bars. And he died age 66 in 2001. And then they've got a Russian one and German one. And Alistair Crowley, a British-born man who was once described as the wickedest man in the world and became notorious for a life of depraved sex, drugs, and dark satanic rituals. Founder of the Thelma religion, the occultist taught that dying by orgasm was the best way to go. In 1930, he faked his own death on a trip to Portugal, allegedly to escape a relationship with the female companion he was traveling with after becoming bored with her. With the help of poet Paulo Fernando Pessoa, Crowley made it look as if he had jumped off a cliff near Lisbon. But the black magic fan didn't do a very good job. He was spotted in Berlin 3 weeks later. Crowley died in 1947, aged 72, from bronchitis in a Hastings boarding house. So he was Alistair Crowley. And then there is this man about. Many of us have imagined what it would be like to be at our own funeral. In 1990, eccentric Austrian musician Friedrich Gulda took the idea one step further, sending a fax announcing his death from a stroke, apparently hoping to read his own obituaries. The plan unraveled within days when he was seen alive. Known as the terrorist pianist for his unconventional style, many believed the hoax was also a PR ploy to boost his next performance called Resurrection Party. Ironically, Gulda died just 9 months later in January 2000, age 69, and so far there has been no comeback concert. What they are saying there so far, there has been no comeback concert, is that they are saying that he might still be alive. When the wreckage of a red kayak was found off the coast of County Durham in March 2002, it was presumed that prison officer John Darwin, last seen paddling into the North Sea, had perished despite the lack of a body. But he and his wife Anne were in financial trouble, and the disappearance was all part of a £679,000 insurance scam. Darwin hid for years in a house next to their home in Seaton Carew, with Anne playing the grieving widow, and their sons were initially led to believe that their father had died. The couple had planned to lie low and then start a new life in Panama. But when they ran into visa problems, John But when they ran into visa problems, John returned to the UK in 2007 and suddenly walked into a police station in London claiming to have amnesia. Suspicious detectives uncovered the truth, and a photo posted online of the couple in the Central American nation helped expose their subterfuge. In 2008, the Darwins were sentenced to 6 years behind bars for fraud. They later split, with John, now 70, moving to the Philippines with new wife Marcy May. Now that's the 2-page spread in the comically published Daily Scar. We shall now concentrate a bit more systematically on John Stonehouse, because this is topical and this really concerns historic facts, historic evidence concerning the Bangladeshis and the role that is Stonehouse played by this man, Reginald Perry, but not necessarily about the Bangladeshis. We shall talk about the first book that Stonehouse wrote, Death of an Idealist. Now, Death of an Idealist was followed by several other books, but Death of an Idealist is the main one, and then there was another one that he wrote, both concerning the British Bangladesh Bank. Why Bangladesh? He was a member of parliament in Britain. So why include Bangladesh at all? And the answer is that he was, along with Donald Chesworth, who was a long-time kind of employee in the Toynbee Hall in Commercial Street, and he was familiar with a number of Bangladeshis, but not a friend of the Bangladeshis. He, like Stonehouse, took advantage from their standpoint of the crisis in then East Pakistan, and the main body of the people in East London, in Tower Hamlets in the Brick Lane area, came from Silot, which was in East Pakistan at that time. And Chesworth and Stonehouse separately and sometimes together were two of the white kind of persons that lent themselves to the promotion for the cause of Bangladesh. And Stonehouse came out as the more greedy of the two. There were others, but Stonehouse came out as being the more greedy of the two after their kind of involvement in the publicity for Bangladesh, as events have proved, and as his Stonehouse's claims and comments in the two books, the first one, The Death of an Idealist, show he had no real love for the humanity of the Bangladeshis or the people of Bangladesh that he was supposedly boosting the case for. He was interested in creating a financial kind of lucrative business proposition project for himself. So as soon as Bangladesh became kind of almost realizable, it wasn't yet, but he already involved himself in the printing of postage stamps for the yet to be kind of declared state of Bangladesh. And this was part of a directly kind of dedicated propaganda thing. Bangladesh didn't exist, but he promoted the idea for donations and contributions. And so when Bangladesh became independent or recognized as an independent, or was recognized by at least a number of independent countries, so called, Stonehouse embarked on a British Bangladesh bank, and his target audience, customers in the UK were, of course, the now newly named Bangladeshis who were previously East Pakistanis. Although citizenship wise, nationality wise, most of these people had already acquired British citizenship by naturalization and other devices. And Stonehouse devoted his anger at the ungrateful Bengalis. And he named a number of the Bengalis as most corrupt and most dishonest and criminal and ungrateful. That was in his two books. One is The Death of an Idealist, and the second one, which was more detailed. And it was based on his adventures that the Leonard Rossiter character was created. Rise and Fall or Fall of Reginald Perrin. And it was the... So let's read the bit in the scar and what they say about Stonehouse. Can we see this one? This one? And let's see if we can find it online in order to... So where is he featuring in this one? So we're looking at John Stonehouse as portrayed in this piece about men who faked their deaths. Stonehouse was not just a man who faked his death in Tower Hamlets. He was, during 1971, he was known to a lot of celebrities in Tower Hamlets. Okay, so this is the reading. So life's a beach, B-E-A-C-H. And it says on November 20th, 1974, a pile of clothes was left on a beach in Miami, Florida, in the USA, by a man who had apparently gone swimming only to have drowned or been killed by a shark. But the handsome ex-Royal Air Force pilot and former government minister John Stonehouse had just pretended to disappear, leaving distraught wife Barbara back in the UK. Heavily in debt and having got the idea from Frederick Forsyth's novel Day of the Jackal, the Labour Member of Parliament planned to set up a new life with his secretary, Sheila Buckley, flying to Australia using new identities in the names of dead constituents. So he stole the names of voters, which will take us to the Spitalfields Housing Co-op, now Spitalfields Housing Association, and one allegation against Abbasuddin alias Halal, that he stole the identities of dead members in order to boost his particular bid to get elected to the committee of the Spitalfields Housing Co-op. We shall come back to that later, but this is the bit I'm reading from about John Stonehouse in the Daily Scar today. So where is this one? So this is the one, this bit I'm reading from. But alerted by his suspicious bank dealings, Australian police began to investigate. Initially believed that he might be the elusive Lord Lucan, the link to the murder of Nanny Sandra Rivet earlier that year, that is 1974. When they discovered Stonehouse's true identity, Stonehouse returned to the United Kingdom and was eventually sentenced to 7 years in jail for fraud. Fraud, remember, is the term that is also topical today, because as we broadcast, another MP, Afsana Begum, MP in the name of Poplar and Limehouse, is undergoing trial at the Snaresbrook Crown Court in the London borough of Redbridge. The borough of Redbridge has nothing to do with the proceedings of the crimes that take place in the Snaresbrook Crown Court. I'm only referring to Redbridge because of location as to where it is located. So evidence later suggested that Stonehouse had also been a spy for the Czech communist government, a claim supported in the new book by great nephew Julian Hayes, but denied by his daughter Julia in hers. Stonehouse died for real in 1988, aged 62, from a heart attack. Now, they've got a picture, of course, of Sheila Buckley. That is Sheila Buckley. And that is Sheila Buckley, and that is Stonehouse. Now, they haven't mentioned the British Bangladesh Bank at all, which is typical of the stupid Daily Scar, because the whole episode, the entirety of Stonehouse's actual adventure, his faking of his death in Florida and other things, and his collapse of his career, everything was to do with the adventure of setting up the British Bangladesh Bank. And that was based on his meeting a number of crooks and criminals and liars who misled him and who abused links with him. And that is what actually aggravated his frustration. And he died eventually, as they said, of heart attack. But despite all of these things, the government in Bangladesh made him an honorary citizen. And that actually was the highlight of his political life, because he was recognized for his role in supporting the cause of Bangladesh. And the Bangladesh government gave not just Stonehouse, but a few other non-Bangladeshi or European persons the same kind of recognition. So we shall come to see if we can find the trace of the Stonehouse book called The Death of an Idealist. And we can see if they actually allow the reading of the book at all. Now, going back to the fraud trial, I mean, it is not known whether the jurors have been in what stage of the jurors has been reached in the trial of Afsana Begum. But the common factor is fraud. That John Stonehouse was tried and convicted of fraud. We don't know whether the jurors in the Afsana Begum trial will convict her. We can only at this stage reiterate and refer to the key points in summary that James Marsland, who was summing up for the prosecution, made to the jurors. And the points I shall come to again in the period that we are waiting to hear about the jurors' conclusion. Now, this is the very kind of delicate image of the book that they are showing online. Obviously, it was a book that was published in a rush. But the other books, one of them was rushed out directly about the trial of John Stonehouse. Very fast. And as is the evidence, I actually got the book very fast, indeed within hours of it being available. I have not read the book by his daughter, Julia Stonehouse, which I shall read in due course. I have only recently become aware of her book. And this is an account published the last Sunday in the Observer. Two relatives of John Stonehouse offer different reasons for why nearly 50 years ago the Labour MP, philanderer, and suspected spy faked his own death in the strangest political story of the 1970s. Now, as it was happening, I was absolutely daily engaged, and including taking a very risky trip by car to the University of Cambridge, where Stonehouse was due to appear. But because of the journey by car, by the time we arrived, Stonehouse had finished his appearance. So, shall come back to Stonehouse again. So what we have done today in this edition is referred to John Stonehouse and his books and his severe condemnation of a number of named criminal Bengalis, he called them, and the fact that despite all of that, he was given a profuse place of honor in the official recognition by the government of Bangladesh for his role. So that was a Bangladesh friend of Bangladesh, Stonehouse. And we have also referred to Afsana Begum, who is a 31-year-old that is born in around 1990, a daughter of a Bangladeshi man called Monir Mia or Moniruddin Ahmad, who became a counselor later. Nothing to do with his daughter, because I met Monir Mia long before his daughter was born, when he had a shop in the Hessel Street. And I later advised him, again, have nothing to do with the fact of his daughter or facts of his children. As a member of the Labour Party, Munir Mia used to complain to me that the white racist members of the Labour Party were not very friendly. So it was my idea. I suggested him over more than one conversation at a time when this was not the done thing. There were no Bangladeshi councillors, really, apart from Ashik Ali, who was complete disappointment, complete embarrassment. So I said to Monir Mia, he should become a councillor, as I have said to many people who became councillors based entirely on my advice and guidance. And I'm not connecting Monir Mia's becoming a councillor following my advice with anything his daughter has done, because I last spoke to him more than 10 years, more than probably 10 or 15 years ago. And I cannot see any evidence of his behavior dealing with his wife or his children. I don't know his wife. I've never met his wife. I never met his children, including Afsana Begum, who I only came to know is his daughter after she became mentioned in the bids to succeed Jim Fitzpatrick as the MP for Poplar and Limehouse. So the only thing that is common between Stonehouse and Afsana Begum is that they're both related to the political lives of the Bangladeshis, decades apart, of course. And it gives me no pleasure to refer to Afsana Begum in the way that she is now having to be referred to. Now, let's see if we can find one of the two books that Andrew Ronsley reviewed last Sunday. Was it last Sunday? Yes. One of the two books he reviewed were John Stonehouse, My Father, The True Story of the Runaway MP by Julia Stonehouse. And the other is Stonehouse, Cabinet Minister, Fraudster, Spy by Julian Hayes. Let's see if we can find the Julian Hayes book. Why? Because it is likely to have less personal emotion attached to him and some kind of objectivity. So the one that is coming up in the search is linked with the bookseller Waterstones. And the hardback price is £25. And what I'm looking for is Any reference to Stonehouse's involvement in the 1971 Bangladesh campaign. Now, why is this woman called Dr. Saleha Ahsan, filmmaker and journalist, Cambridge, included in this? Is she from Bangladesh? Because in the summary of reviews displayed online, there is no reference to Bangladesh. And yet this apparently Bangladeshi woman has been included. It's a ploy. Let's see what we can find. Dr. Saleha Ahsan is a practicing emergency medicine doctor, currently working in intensive care. She is also a filmmaker and a broadcast journalist, having worked and produced content across multimedia platforms. She has worked and presented programs for Channel 4, Channel 4 News, Dispatches, Coronavirus, Can Our NHS Scope, and she is shown as a member of the Liberal Democrats. And her agents are Knight Aiton. And see if she has been it doesn't say whether she's a Bangladeshi or a Pakistani. And there is no reference to Bangladesh in that particular website run by Knight Aiton, who are mentioned as her agents. So how do they describe her? Her nationality is British. So what the Daily Scar is doing on page 24 about John Stonehouse is that it is blanking Bangladesh altogether. Whereas it was all about Bangladesh. What happened to him politically was mainly about Bangladesh. His trial, we can check what Stonehouse said in the House of Commons shortly before he was tried and sent to jail. Stonehouse was, when he made interventions in the House of Commons in the last few years, was very concerned about the kind of aspects of the costs of trial of members of parliament, etc. And he wasn't remotely interested in the generics of the issues. he actually asked the Attorney General what was the total cost to public funds of the trial of Mr. John Stonehouse. Quite why he thought that would capture the attention, the imagination of the nation, is not stated, but Stonehouse was trying to make a point about the fact that trying him was an unnecessary cost to the public, which is not true. Now, as I said, the current fraud trial, for which another member of parliament connected with Tower Hamlets, namely Afsana Begum, is still undergoing trial, or the jurors either have been recalled or are likely to be called not too long in the future, too far in the future. And it is likely that their verdict would be made public. In the latest publicly known statement attributed to the side of the prosecution, there are points that have been made about Afsana Begum being guilty of fraud, are points that have been represented by James Marsland in the Snaresbrook Crown Court. And James Marsland has said that Afsana Begum was guilty because of the points that he then listed and elaborated on. One was that both her mother and her aunt submitted documentary kind of evidence starting in 2009, or referring to events in 2009 and onwards, that contradicted her, that is Afsana Begum's, statement about the property describable as her, Afsana Begum's, parents' flat or the parents' house or home, whatever the place was. And both her aunt's evidence and her mother's evidence, submitted years before she was even suspected of being a fraudster, contradicted the facts that she stated or represented in the court during this trial. So her mother and her aunt. And according to her, her own brother suspected her of being possessed. And according to her, she feared that honor-based violence would be done to her, would be meted out to her, presumably in the context of everything else she said, by her family. Linked with the suspicion she ascribed to her brother. So her mother, her aunt, her brother are portrayed during the proceedings as being on the other side in terms of the evidence. And then, of course, was her ex-partner or ex-husband, who since became an elected councillor in May 2018 at the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. Ahtasham ul Haque. The Haque has nothing to do with me. whatsoever, not related, not known, except for one single phone call in depth and one conversation that took place at a public meeting, nothing to do with any of these proceedings. So Muhammad Haque was blamed by Afsana Begum as being the source or being one of the sources of her alleged fear, for which she allegedly fled a particular property. And again, according to the summary of the prosecution representative, James Marsland, Muhammad Haque had nothing to do with any of the things that related to Afsana Begum making an application for social housing. And the details are not necessary to be recounted here, except to say that the detailed facts, as detailed in the claim by Afsana Begum, and the rest of the details about why she was prosecuted, show that Muhammad Haque had nothing to do with wanting or needing to file a social housing bid or application on behalf of Afsana Begum. None of his circumstances fitted the need to have a bid or an application for social housing, either for himself or for Afsana Begum. And then there are other two things that James Marsland included in his representation of the case against Afsana Begum. That years apart, Afsana Begum made substantially identical communications to the relevant part of the Tower Hamlets Council's housing operation, let's say. And on both occasions, years apart, the section of the council which she contacted behaved in identically unreliable way post facto. That is to say, when those behavior were separately presented during the course of the trial. So what James Marsland has said, that all the parties, the council's housing operation, her ex-husband or ex-partner, her aunt and her mother, these are the only substantial kind of factors, plus her brother, or personalities or elements or entities that she had mentioned about her being prosecuted. And James Marsland summarized that she didn't have real, credible, believable reason or evidence for attaching the fault on any of those parties or persons, apart from the fact that she was the guilty party in all of this. So that's the summary that James Marsland has left before the jurors. And as we finish Friday of the week, this is the second week that saw the trial continue of Afsana Begum, charged with more than one count of fraud. And it is assumed that the jurors are now in the middle of or are about to consider the evidence that was presented before them by the prosecution and on behalf of Afsana Begum by the what is called defense. And it is up to those responsible for the management of the whole trial that a decision will be announced in due course, and once it is done, we shall appropriately comment on, and based on the evidence of what has been found, we shall make predictive observations about the implications of whatever the outcome is. Going back to the fraud trial of John Stonehouse, it is a fact that before he even escaped to Miami, and from Miami he escaped to Australia, we had that is myself and the Barisal born lawyer called Fazlul Haque and a couple of other people were regularly in contact with the proceedings or the events that were unfurling against John Stonehouse and Chesworth and others. And we predicted in 1974, before Stonehouse was reported to have died and been later found in Australia, we had predicted that he was going to sink. We never had imagined that he would sink literally, the way that he did sink in Miami, and then surfaced in Australia the way he did. Because during the year 1971, many of the so-called sympathetic gestures for Bangladesh that Stonehouse was making on the record came across as half-baked. Well, it seems that Afsana Begum has been cleared of the fraudulent housing charge that was made against her. It is now going to be elaborated on in the relevant media in due course, of course. It says that a Labour MP wept in court today as she was cleared of housing benefit fraud. Now, this is not the charge. I mean, housing benefit was not the main charge, was it? But we shall see the details as they emerge. And one of the first to congratulate Afsana Begum has been Jeremy Corbyn, according to the first reports. So let's see what else is being said. Okay, the court heard Miss Begum, who won her seat in the 2019 general election, had applied to go on the council's social housing register on 22nd of July 2011. Her charges related to separate periods between 18 January and 21 May 2013, 21 May 2013, and 23rd of March 2014, and 28th of October 2015, and 21st of March 2016. Ms. Begum was alleged to have attempted to gain social housing in the first period by claiming she lived in an overcrowded three-bedroom house, making her a higher priority in the social housing queue. However, according to social housing application made in 2009 by Ms. Begum's aunt, the house had 4 bedrooms. Ms. Begum maintained there had only ever been 3 bedrooms in the house, and that she had never had her own bedroom while living there. She could not explain why her family members had said there were 4 bedrooms. She later moved into a different property with her then partner Ahtashamul Haque without informing the council, where she lived for more than 2 years. Ms. Begum claims Mr. Haque was controlling and coercive and took over her finances. During this period, bids for housing were made in Ms. Begum's name. She denied making the bids. "I'm shocked to see these records," she told the court. Jurors found Ms. Begum not guilty of all charges after the judge gave a majority direction. Now we shall come to a lot more of this particular case. How is the Guardian painting this one? Labour MP Afsana Begum cleared of housing fraud. Poplar and Limehouse MP acquitted over claims she withheld information to get social housing. Peter Walker and Aubrey Allegretti, and they have posted this at 15:35 hours BST, that is 14:35 hours GMT. So we are able to update while still on the same broadcast. Now, what we are going to do, immediately we're going to send an email, and we're saying it on broadcast, and we shall tweet Ahtashamul Haque, and we shall ask him specifically to answer the allegation and assertion that Afsana Begum made against him, and also which was an allegation that was repeatedly referred to. Now, this is the guardian piece that we are asking Muhammad Haque to answer. So we have received confirmation that a series of questions have been tweeted, sent by Twitter to Muhammad Haque as the first of a series of questions that have arisen as a result of the publication of the news that Afsana Begum has been cleared of the allegations of housing fraud. At her trial by jury held at the Snaresborough Crown Court. Now we have other questions about the behavior of the Tower Hamlets Council, and the questions number in the hundreds. Nothing to do with the decision about Afsana Begum being cleared. It is to do with the behavior of the Tower Hamlets Council itself in routinely, habitually lying on housing and other services that the council owes duties to, about its powers and about its resources. We shall be formulating updates on all of those in later editions. And so therefore, at this stage, we are going to conclude just before, I think, 2 hours. This is part A. We shall continue in the later parts as and when we broadcast.